Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. I have another family favorite recipe that I'd like to share with you, and it is called Hortobágyi Palacsinta, Hortobágyi Crepes. So what you will need for this recipe, first starting with the meat filling, is 3 kilograms of boneless pork loin center and rib roast, 3 onions, 6 whole garlic cloves, 1 red bell pepper, 1 teaspoon of ground black pepper, 1 tablespoon of sweet paprika, 1½ tablespoons of vegeta or vegetable base, 1½ teaspoons of table salt, 5 tablespoons of vegetable oil, and 5 to 6 cups of water. So what I did was I cut up the pork into thumb-size pieces, and this is what the sizes should look like for the pork. And then I'm just going to show you in a small bowl what the pepper and the onions and garlic should be chopped up that fine. So I used a food processor to chop it up. So if you don't have a food processor, you can also use just a sort of a mini chopper if you have one at home to chop it up fine like that. And I've got the rest of the vegetables in the oil, the 5 tablespoons of oil. So I've heated up 5 tablespoons of oil to saute the vegetables. And I've got that at a medium heat. So I've already put that into the roasting pan. So I'm using a large roasting pan. And I've preheated the oil, and then I've added the vegetables to it. So then what I'm going to do is when the vegetables are have a glossy texture, I'm going to add the cut up meat to the above ingredients and fry them for about approximately 10 to 15 minutes at about a high to medium heat. So you want to be alternating your heat back and forth. And then you need to be continually stirring the ingredients. While you're frying the meat mixture, you want to add and mix the ground black pepper, the sweet paprika, vegeta or the vegetable base, and salt together with the meat. Then before putting it into the oven, you would pour 5 to 6 cups of water into the roasting pan to cover all the ingredients, so the ingredients should be covered. Then you cook the meat mixture in a 375 degrees Fahrenheit oven for about half an hour. So you'd want to preheat your oven, get that ready, and then lower the temperature of the oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit and continue to cook it for about an additional hour. And then when it's done, you want to check to make sure that your meat is cooked well by using a meat thermometer. And then you remove the roasting pan from the oven. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the meat from the liquid and then place it into a separate bowl and allow it to cool until it is warm. Okay, and then I'm going to use a food processor or manual meat grinder to finely grind down the meat and place it into another bowl. So that would be that's your filling. That would be, you grind up that meat. But you save the liquid for the topping. Okay, and what I'm going to be doing when I come back, when the meat has been cooked thoroughly, I'm going to show you how to prepare the liquid. Using the liquid, I'm going to show you how to prepare the, it's kind of like a sauce. It's kind of like a sauce that you'd put on top of the crepes. So you'd use the meat filling for the inside of the crepes, and then your topping would go on top. You would spoon it on top of your crepes. So what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll show you how to prepare this great recipe. Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. I had in the oven the actual meat filling recipe, which was the 3 kilograms of boneless pork loin center and rib roast, 3 onions, 6 whole garlic cloves, and 1 red bell pepper. And what I did was I used the food processor to finely chop the 3 of the vegetables, and then I cut up the pork roast into small thumb-sized pieces, and then got a large roasting pan and added 5 tablespoons of vegetable oil to it and heated it up, preheated it, and then I added the garlic and the bell pepper and onions into the heated oil, and then I sautéed those 3 ingredients until they had a glossy texture, and then I added the diced meat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what the meat looks like. So what I've done is I've strained off the liquid with this spoon. So it was in the roasting pan, and then I took the meat out of the liquid that was that came from the meat and the vegetables and the water. So I'm going to show you what the liquid looks like. It's got a beautiful brown color to it, and it's because I've fried the pork, so you get that brown color to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding some sour cream and flour to this. So what I've done is with a whisk I added, and this is the sour cream, and I've used 5% sour cream, the milk fat, and I've added the 3 tablespoons of sour cream and 1 tablespoon of flour, and I use the whisk to sort of blend it together so that there's no lumps in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this liquid from the meat and the vegetables and the water to a boil, so a quick boil, and then I'm going to be adding the sour cream to that. And what's going to happen to this liquid is going to get thick. It's going to be like a gravy-like texture to it, and this is what's going to be used for the top of the Hortobágyi Palacsinta. Now, if you have any leftover of this, you can put it into a freezer-safe container, and you can freeze it down. And you can also freeze your crepes and the meat, so you can have this even the next day, or within a week if you eat it. It's great served as a dinner or for supper. This is more for a dinner or supper meal. And this will serve a large group of people. So if you wanted to serve it to a smaller group of people, then you would use half the recipe. So you'd cut the recipe in the portions in half and make a smaller amount. So, but I'm making up extra so that I can freeze it, and then throughout the week, if my husband or I want to have 1 or 2 of these palacsinta for lunch, then it's ready to be warmed up. It can be heated in the microwave or the oven, and it's ready to serve. So I'm going to put this onto the stove. And I'm going to bring this to a boil. And what I'm going to do now is show you what I did with the meat. So I strained off the meat, the liquid, and this is what the thumb size pieces look like. And then what I did was in my food processor, which is right here, I've added the diced pork, and I'm going to put it on high, and I'm going to grind it down to this consistency. This is what it should look like. The one that you're going to be putting into the crepes. It should be that fine. And it is a bit dry, so what my mother suggested that I do, because I phoned her today for some more tips, and she said to add a little bit of the extra of the liquid. So what you do is you'd add some of the liquid in there and moisten it. Okay. Now I'm going to just show you. This is my food processor that I have. It's a great one to use. You can use any kind of processor that you have at home. It can be a smaller one too. This one's quite a large one because I do a lot of baking and cooking. So I'm just going to turn this on. I'm just going to make it that consistency. Of course, I showed you what the texture will look like. And this is coming to a boil, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the sour cream base into this, let's get it ready. It's just about coming to a boil, so you bring that to a quick boil, and then you bring it down to medium heat, and then you'd continually stir that because that's going to thicken. So that's going to be your actual topping for the crepes. So what I'll do is I will prepare that, and then I'll set the topping aside, and then what I'll do is I will prepare the crepes, and I want to show you how to make the crepes. So I'll be back to show you what this great recipe looks like. Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. I prepared the meat filling for the Hortobágyi Palacsinta, Hortobágyi crepes, and I've already ground down the meat, and I've prepared the topping to go with the crepes. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start making preparing the crepes. So I will show you how that's put together. So it's a very simple recipe that my grandmother gave to our family, and it's what I used was 3.5 to 4 cups of flour. So I used 4 cups and 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 to 3 tablespoons of vegetable shortening for the frying pan, so that when I'm frying the crepes, I have enough shortening there to fry down all my crepes. And then I have 4 large eggs and 4 cups of milk. So what I did was, in a large bowl, with a fork, I beat 4 eggs until they're frothy, and you can use a whisk also, but I've used a fork to do that. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the salt to the eggs. Then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to gradually add my flour into the egg mixture. So I'm just going to use I'm going to gradually mix the flour into the eggs. And then I'm going to pour the milk into the batter, and I'm going to stir it until it is very smooth. So this was a very popular dish with my grandmother and mother. So it was kind of like a treat day where they would make this with meat. And then of course I've got another recipe on the website that is, the crepes are made similar to this, but you fill it with jam and you fill it with cottage cheese, and there's a cottage cheese sort of filling for it. It's more of a sweet recipe, and this batter does not have the sugar in it, because the other crepes that I do with the cottage cheese and jam, it has one teaspoon of sugar in it, but this one doesn't, because we're doing a meat filling. So I've left out the sugar for this recipe, so it's just salt. So I'm just going to continue adding this. And when I went to visit my grandmother every summer, I'd have 2 months off, and I'd visit her in Hungary, and she would always ask me, "What can I make for you, my dear, for something special for you that I can make for you?" And I says, "Can you make some palacsinta for me, some crepes?" And oh, that was a treat. I mean, I think she made it about 3 times while I was visiting. So I'm going to continue adding the flour to that, and then I'm going to start pouring in the milk and start mixing that together, because you want it to have a smooth consistency. So I've put kind of like the half of the flour in there, 2 cups, and then I'm just going to add about probably about 1.5 cups into the batter, and I'm going to keep stirring it until it gets nice and smooth. So I'm just going to add a little bit more flour. So I use just a large serving spoon. That works just great. And I mix up some more, and then I add some more liquid in there. And this is a delicious recipe also. Actually my uncle owned a restaurant in Hungary, and it was one of his specialty meals. It's a Hortobágyi Palacsinta. Would be one of the favorites of his customers. So, and he also made it for us when my mom and dad and I went for a trip to Hungary together, and he would prepare a special dinner for us, and this would be Hortobágyi Palacsinta would be one of his recipes that he would serve it. So I'm going to add some more flour, so I'm kind of like alternating about 2 large spoons of it. It's just easier than to stir it, and it's all stirred by hand. A lot of the recipes are done by hand. Stirred by, like kneaded by hand, or stirred with a wooden spoon or large spoon. So I'm just going to add some more liquid to it, so it's just easier to then to distribute the flour with the liquid, and then you have to stir it until it gets really nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue doing this until the batter gets smooth, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you how to prepare the crepes. I'm going to have some ready for you to see, and I will show you how to put them into the frying pan and get them ready for the meat filling. Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. I prepared the crepes for the meat filling, and what I did with the crepes is I added salt to the eggs into a large mixing bowl and then briskly beat the mixture with a fork until it was frothy, and then I used a large serving spoon gradually and I mixed the flour into the eggs. And then I poured the milk into the batter and stirred it until it was smooth. And so at a medium heat, I began by heating up a small amount of vegetable shortening, approximately the tip of a butter knife, in a frying pan. So for when you are preparing the crepes, make sure that that's the amount of vegetable shortening that you use for each of the crepes. So it's just the tip of a butter knife. That's the amount of vegetable shortening that you should be using. So then you pour a small ladle of batter into the frying pan when making each of the crepes. And then what you do is how to distribute the batter is that you evenly, gently swirl the frying pan in a circular motion so that the batter spreads evenly inside the frying pan. And then you fry the crepes until they are slightly brown on both sides. And you remember to add the the vegetable shortening each time that you are ready to fry a crepe. And then you stack the crepes on a medium-sized plate. And then you fill the center with the filling that I showed you, the ground filling. So what I did to keep the filling moist, I added a couple tablespoons of the liquid from the meat when the diced pork was cooking in the oven. So when it was ready, I finely ground down the pork in a food processor. So and then I took that out and I put it in a bowl and added a couple tablespoons of the actual liquid so that the meat isn't too dry. You don't want to be adding too much liquid because then it'll get too your crepes will get too soggy. So what I've done is I've filled 3 of the crepes, and I'm going to show you how to fill the crepes and to roll them. So I'm just going to show you what they look like. So and I've put them into a rectangular Pyrex heat-resistant dish, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this Pyrex dish with tin foil. So reason being is so that your crepes don't dry out. So as you're putting them into the oven, I've preheated the oven to 375 degrees, or 275, pardon me, degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to be putting the crepes in there to keep them warm before serving them. So I'll just show you how to fill the crepes, and here are all the crepes that I've made up from the recipe that I have with this, the recipe for Palacsinta. Now, if you want to use all the meat, you need to double the crepe recipe if you want to make a whole bunch of these. So there's about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You could probably do 10. I did mine a little bit thicker, but you can get 10 crepes out of that recipe that I have. But if you want to do 20 crepes, you're expecting a lot of company and you want to make it for a large crowd, you can double the crepe recipe. If you have any leftover meat, the ground meat, you can actually put it into a freezer-safe container, and you can put it into the freezer, and you can save it for next time. You can make up some more crepes and They last for a couple weeks, and you can make your crepes and then use the filling. So any leftover filling, you can freeze it down and use it for another batch of crepes. Also the sauce, if you have a lot of that left over too, the topping, you can also freeze that too. So you can serve that again, to your family or your friends. Within about a couple weeks, you can actually still eat them. And even with crepes, you can actually freeze those too. One of the tips that I like to mention about the paprika, make sure that you put the paprika in last in your into the meat, because you don't want the paprika to burn. So last 5 minutes before, when you saute your vegetables and your meat, make sure to put the paprika in the last 5 minutes, and then stir it into your meat. Also with the liquid, make sure that your liquid is cooled down before you add your sour cream and your flour mixture base. Now, for this particular recipe, you will need quite a bit of flour, because there is a lot of liquid. There's about 6 cups of liquid, and plus all the liquid that comes out of your meat and the vegetables. So what I did was I used, for half the amount of the liquid, I used 4 tablespoons of flour and 4 tablespoons of sour cream. So, but if you wanted to use all the sauce and put it together that way, then you use the double, like you use 8 tablespoons of flour and 8 tablespoons of sour cream. Then you get a nice thick topping. I know I mentioned how I mixed it together with 1 tablespoon of flour and 3 tablespoons of sour cream. I would change that to 8 tablespoons of flour and 8 tablespoons of sour cream for the whole entire liquid that you have there. But if you want to cut it in half, you can do that too. So depending on how much of the topping you want to make. So I'll show you what this, how to fill the crepes. So what I do is I use a large, kind of like a larger sort of serving spoon, this size, and I'm just going to put it in the center. And then I'm going to roll this. You want a lot of meat in there. And then put it into your Pyrex dish. And then keep filling them. And I've got about 9 crepes here that I'm going to prepare, because I'm going to be serving this to my parents and my husband and myself. So, and any leftovers, you could probably keep them in the fridge for a day or two, and you can still eat them. So there's 5 filled. And I'm going to fill 6 of them. 6 of the crepes. And I'm going to leave the rest for, I might just freeze these down and serve them for in the next couple weeks. So these I would put in a Ziploc freezer, kind of a freezer safe plastic sort of bag, and I would freeze them, and I can serve them again for supper. So and then what I do is I'm going to put them in the oven. I'm going to keep them warm. But before I do that, I'm going to show you what this great recipe looks like with the sauce. And I'm going to show you the thickness of the sauce. It should be Should be like a gravy. And so I'd use a lot of, it's very thick, like that. It's got the sour cream and the flour in it. And of course the it has a brilliant flavor to it because of the pork and the vegetables and the bell peppers and onions in there. And that's going to go on the top of the crepe. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like with the crepe. I'll put this on the plate. And I'm going to show you what this great recipe looks like with the and you can put on as much as you like. I'm just going to put on 2 spoonfuls like that, and that is a great recipe called Hortobágyi Palacsinta, Hortobágyi Crepes. Hortobágyi Crepes. Magnificent flavors, magnificent smells in the kitchen. So I hope that you enjoy serving this to your family and friends. And if you have any questions or comments regarding this recipe, please feel free to contact me at irene@arinkaskitchen.com or arinkaskitchen.com. Until next time, bon appetit, jó étvágyat!